Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Catherine Spitz-Cohan, Executive Director of Film Pittsburgh. I'm excited today to speak with the filmmaking team from the comedy Eat Wheaties, and I'd love them to introduce themselves if we could go around and just say your name and what your role was on the film.
Hi, I'm Scott Abrahamovitch. I wrote, directed, and produced Eat Wheaties.
I'm Michael Kun. I'm the author of the book, The Locklear Letters, that the movie's based on, and I'm sure you all recognize me from being an extra in the movie.
I'm Daniel Webb. I'm the executive producer of the movie.
I'm David Phillips, and I am also a producer on the film, and you might recognize me. I had one line in the movie.
Listen, I laughed and enjoyed the movie so much, so thank you for making it. I want to start off by just asking a little bit about the genesis of the book, Michael, and how that book came to be, and then how Scott and you connected to make Eat Wheaties.
Sure, I'd be happy to tell you about it. You know, I wrote this book about 20 years ago. And I wrote it on a vacation in Southern California. I spent the better part of a week just sitting on the beach, sitting at pools, sitting in bars and restaurants, and just making myself laugh. And I really wasn't even thinking it would be published. I was just entertaining myself. It was published about 17 years ago. And then the book kind of bounced all over Hollywood. The book was called The Locklear Letters. And it bounced from production company to production company. And every couple of years, I'd hear some idea about Will Ferrell or Ben Stiller. And after a while, I just started to think, this is Hollywood. It's never going to get made, and which is fine. And then I got a call out of the blue from Scott, who we had a mutual friend who shared the book with Scott. Scott called and asked whether or not the film rights were available. They had recently become available. I think we met for lunch or dinner or something. Scott brought a check. I think it was for about $25 million. I couldn't say no. But I will tell you, I think Scott is a handful of a small group, a handful of people who I just had this tremendous sense for immediately, and I knew the book would be in good hands, and so Scott took it, went from there. And I will tell you, forgive me for going beyond your question. For me, I will tell you, this has just been such an amazing, wonderful experience. I do have some friends that are authors that have that had sort of warned me in advance that the way this works is you sell the rights to your book. You'll never get to see or hear anything about what's going on. And then, if you're lucky, you get to buy a ticket and show up on opening night. And the people that you see on the screen here have just been so warm-hearted and so generous to me and my family, and have just made this just such a tremendous experience. And so, to have been involved in any way with this, and for them to let me be involved, has just been wonderful.
Well, I can see that in the making of the film. I mean, what you see on screen it looks like everybody is having such a good time. So it doesn't surprise me what you're saying, Michael. Scott, tell us a little bit about the transition. Obviously, social media wasn't that big a deal probably in the book, right, Michael? In the original book. So tell us, just when you read the book, what were you thinking, Scott?
Well, I loved the book the second that I started reading it. From the first page, the first letter, and the book is all told through letters. It's an epistolary novel that's set in when it was written. So there was, I believe, email just had been created, but it was something that wasn't quite what it is now. And so the book was all told through letters, through his Sid Straw stationery, through flowers, cards he was writing on flowers. It's hysterical. And the first letter, the first page of the book is this letter to Heather Locklear, similar to the first social media post that Sid writes to Elizabeth Banks. So when I read it, I loved it. I didn't quite know how to adapt it when I first read it, just because it was done in such a specific way that it would have been very hard to translate. But then I reread it again a few years ago, and the idea of social media and the way that people feel that they're connected to celebrities, even if they're not, but just the accessibility of them made this feel like a current story in a way that was worthy of telling it as a feature. And I think the beauty of it, transposing it into present day, is that all the themes that Michael had set up in the book, which were relevant then, are even more relevant now. And I'm excited that that we're bringing this to the world at a time when I think the major theme, which is about connection and the challenges of people to have that human connection in this world, is even more so after this pandemic and just this challenge of how we can be separate from each other and connect. And that's Sid's biggest challenge in his life. So.
Great. So Daniel and David, as producers, how did you come to the film, and who came first? And can you talk a little bit about the casting, or was that all Scott, or just a little bit of that would be interesting?
So I developed a relationship with Scott, just a friendship first off, and we were sharing projects with one another. And, much like Scott had the experience, he shared the book and the script with me, and I just immediately fell in love with it, and saw bits of Sid in myself, and have friends who you've dealt with Sids before, and I thought it was just an amazing story that we really wanted to tell. So we got everything together and needed to find a great Canadian producer, and we came up with Dave Phillips.
That's thank you, Dan. They kind of had a connection to me through this other film and this other producer I'd worked with, and we went out for lunch, and it was kind of a similar story where, I read the script and I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was fresh and new, and it, was funny. And then I met these guys, and they're great, and we all got along immediately. We all have a bit of a hockey playing background, and so we, talked about a lot about hockey, and we talked about what we wanted to do as filmmakers and as people. And I think for me, I'm at the stage of my career where I like projects are mostly based on like who's attached and what the project is. And what I loved was, I think it's always from the top down, and you need to have a strong script, and you need to have a director and other producers and people that have a good heart and are making a film for the right reasons. And everything about this script was, and about Dan and Scott, were people that were making it for the right reasons, with things to say about connection and humanity and empathy, which isn't always the case for a lot of movies that are made. And so I was super excited to jump on board. And then as far as the casting, we had bandied about a few ideas. Luckily, the script was already in the hands of the big agency UTA, and we were been looking at a couple people, and suddenly, Scott had mentioned that he had talked to an agent there who had suggested Tony Hale, and me and Dan both flipped out, because myself, I've been a huge Tony Hale fan forever. And not only that, I just think he would be the perfect person to play this. And it was like, oh my God. Once that name was said, I couldn't think about anyone else potentially even playing this. And so once he got attached, luckily everyone in the world seems to really want to work with that man. And so it was a producer's and casting dream. We had people that we could go to that were, people that we admired, and they wanted to work with Tony. And then we also had a fantastic casting director with Lisa London, who also helped facilitate a lot of that and bring in some really great ideas. And then we even brought in a few people that we'd worked with in the past as well. I'd done a film with Lamorne Morris, and so we basically got the cast together like that.
Well, Tony was so great. if I met him, I think I might call him Sid by mistake. Yeah, he was really fantastic. Any fun stories you want to share over the making of the? First of all, I'm sorry, I have one other question. Eat Wheaties. Where did that come from? Like that, I'm assuming that was not in the book, the original book, Michael, or was it?
No, that's in the book.
Okay, okay, great. Okay.
That's Sid's catchphrase, the way he signs off all of his letters in the book. And I will tell you, I can actually answer your other question if you don't mind. That the story in the book about how Sid comes up with that catchphrase, "Eat Wheaties," is about a volleyball game that he plays in college with, in the book, it's Heather Locklear. And that was based on something that happened to me when I was in college. And so there was this, for lack of a better word, this surreal moment when I was allowed or invited to be on the set. And I was on the set for the scene where Tony Hale is explaining his relationship with Elizabeth Banks, and in particular talking about the volleyball game where she, told them all to eat their Wheaties. And I was sitting in the back thinking, okay, I'm watching an actor describe a scene from a book that's based on a scene from my life. This is kind of wonderful. But yes, it is in the book. And Frank, the funny thing is, in retrospect, it should have been the name of the book all along.
Gotcha. Cool. What else?
One thing that always stands out to me that, we always talk about between ourselves too is, going back to our amazing cast. There was a lot of moments where we had great improv and great moments where our cast were really able to shine. And one particular moment you might recall when the wonderful Paul Walter Hauser pulls out a stapler in the middle of the scene and goes and staples his hand. And as wonderful as the script was, that was nowhere in the book or the script. And Paul just asked us one day if, once we had everything that we needed, if he could try something different. And he did. And, it was extraordinary. And we were all holding the house, trying not to laugh and ruin the shot. And, it was just an incredible moment. And I think something that really summarizes, the time we had on set and the wonderful cast and crew that we had throughout the whole experience.
I think it also, just to add to Dan's, I think it speaks to Scott as a director too. He had his vision and what he wanted, but when we had such powerhouse improvisational actors and comedians, I thought Scott really handled the balance well between what his vision was and allowing them to play and see what they did. And I think that, again, like I said, top down, everyone felt confident that they were in a safe place to try things. I mean, that was Paul Walter Hauser's first day he puts a staple in his hand, and that just kind of set the tone for what that experience was going to be like. So I think Scott did a great job with that.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, Scott, you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. That particular scene was maybe halfway through his first day, Paul's first day, and we knew that we had somebody who was bringing a different kind of energy that was contagious, because it was something that, behind the camera and in front of the camera, everyone, just fed off of it in such a fun way. And, that moment was, I just didn't want to ruin that take. And so did Rizwan Manji, and you can see him, he didn't know nobody knew what he was going to do, Paul. And that was the wonderful energy that just was there for the rest of the shoot as well. So it was nice to have that early on. It set a tone. I think that this is a comedy that was going to allow for pushing some of the edges in some ways that were not necessarily in the script. And I think that with some of the other comedic talents that we had was just it was making every day feel alive. Nobody felt like they were there without being able to infuse their creative energy into it. And I think that also came from Tony. The pleasure of working with him was that, having him on board for a few months before we shot, we were able to really, really cater the script and the character to some of his ideas and strengths. And as a collaboration, it was just something special. And Paul obviously brought that to it. Every actor, really. I mean, we we basically got our first choice for every single role, which
That's
is
amazing.
especially for a low budget indie film. It's not normal.
Right.
So,
Do you mind sharing with us what the budget was?
I don't want to say the number, but it was lower than you would expect.
Gotcha. No worries.
Yeah.
I really, I know that people are going to wonder whether Elizabeth Banks appears in this film as the film goes on. And I'm going to spoiler alert this. I'm sure people are going to watch this after they've seen the movie, but if they don't, too bad. But my point is that I wasn't sure how it was, whether she was going to come to the reunion or, I just knew she had to have a part in this film, and it took me by surprise. I loved it that that she calls him and leaves a voicemail at the end, and I just have to know, was that really Elizabeth Banks?
Yeah,
Wow.
and the fun of that idea of does Sid know Elizabeth Banks? It's a through line throughout the film, and it's part of Sid's arc is this idea that he's looking to connect with people and using this relationship that he may have had with Elizabeth Banks as this selling point. That's and people I think people who do have brushes with celebrity, it's almost a commodity in some ways. The challenge was we always wanted to have some piece of Elizabeth Banks at the end. It's one of my favorite parts of the book is, one of the, I don't know if I should spoil the ending of the book either. But, he's writing all these letters. You don't know if she's ever even receiving these letters that he's writing. And then the last letter acknowledges that he did receive a letter back. So I always felt that was something important to, to Michael's story that we wanted to really keep, just because it was something as a reader that I loved. We got Elizabeth Banks' approval to use her as the celebrity in the film, which was so lucky for us. We got University of Pennsylvania. They were incredible about helping make the film look authentic with all kinds of paraphernalia. But with Elizabeth Banks, we had talked about ideas of, should we try to get her to appear on screen? The idea of her showing up at the reunion obviously is something that the audience is waiting for. To me, it was very, very important to have Sid's journey, not include the validation of Elizabeth Banks until his real story is told. And his real story is about connecting with the people around him that he really cares about and that see him for who he is. And that really, is that last hospital scene where he's with his brother and his sister-in-law and Wendy. That's Sid's ending, and I think the bonus of Elizabeth Banks remembering him is something for us as an audience more so than for Sid. At the end of that story, he doesn't need Elizabeth Banks anymore, so it was important.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was perfect the way you did that.
Yeah. Hey, Catherine, can I add something on that?
Sure.
If you don't mind. One of the things I will tell you is, Scott, I'm just so impressed by what he's done, and he took a book that's told through letters. And he has made a movie that's so true to the book, yet he's fleshed out things and added things and changed things. And I will tell you, the arc, while the arc of the book and the arc in the movie are very, very similar, what Scott has done with it, for me, is, looking at it as a film lover, I love what he's done with it with the end, because by the time you get to the end, you almost forget that this whole thing was all about him trying to make this connection with Elizabeth Banks. And so for those who haven't seen it, I'm sorry if this spoils it. I will tell you, I've seen this movie at least a dozen times in different iterations of it. And that last scene when she, with the voicemail message.
Well, it's in the credits, right?
It gets to me every time.
Yeah.
It gets to me every time.
Stay tuned for the credits, folks. Watch the credits.
Yeah.
Michael, does that happen to be Roberto Clemente behind your shoulder?
That is Roberto Clemente behind my shoulder. He was that's a replica of the statue that's outside PNC Park that I've had for about 25 years. But yeah,
wow. Many of us know that well. So, guys, tell us about what's happening now with the film, with the book, and what can we expect from you guys? What's happening with the book, Michael?
The book, I will tell you, I mentioned it came out 17 years ago, so the title, The Locklear Letters, will mean almost nothing to almost anybody. Because of the movie, there's now a renewed interest in it. So the book is being re-released. It should be available within a matter of weeks, and they're re-releasing it under the title "Eat Wheaties" instead of The Locklear Letters. So I'm excited to have that come out. And then I've got a new novel that'll be out early next year called The Allergic Boy versus the Left-Handed Girl.
I am a left-handed girl. And Scott, what about you?
Well, we're working on this, the release of this film. We're hoping that that after this film festival run that we're doing, that eWeeties will be available widely towards the end of the year or early next year when things get a little safer, particularly for theatrical releases. So it's been a little bit of a challenging time. It's been exciting creatively to be able to jump into some other projects that I'm really working hard on getting ready when film production is relatively safe. I know some projects have gone into production in the last month or two, but especially for indie films, it's a little more challenging to get those rolling. But it's I'm excited for audiences and your audiences to check out eWeeties.
Great. Well, we're very much looking forward to sharing it and getting feedback from the audience. I can't thank all of you enough. Daniel, David, anything else you want to add to the conversation?
If you happen to be on Hulu, check out Bite Size Halloween. I got a short that I produced on there called Creature. It's episode 8 on Hulu. And yeah, other than that, I'm just in development of a couple projects I'm super passionate about.
Cool. Daniel?
Yeah, same thing. Just developing a couple things. Have a documentary that I'm gonna hopefully be releasing end of this year, early next year. But just if you liked our film, please tell your friends and your family. And we just want to get the word out there and share this awesome message of the film with everyone we can. So thank you guys so much for having us.
Absolutely. And you can check out our film at Eat Wheaties Film on all the social media platforms. But yeah, like Dan said, we need as much support as possible. It's tough out there, especially right now during everything that's going on.
Well, we're here for you. Thank you from Film Pittsburgh. And we will hopefully show many more films from this team down the line. So thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate it. And we will sign off. Thank you.
Eat Wheaties.
Eat Wheaties. Eat Wheaties. Eat Wheaties.